I want to tell you why women don't want to have sex in relationships. The real reason, the most common, the most important reason, but the one that probably nobody tells you about. And that doesn't allow you to solve it. I'm in this video for women to understand themselves, but also for men to understand their partners. Maybe you think that it's about raising a libido or a sex drive through hormones or health or exercise. Or maybe it's to do with lack of time or energy or stress. Or you wonder if it's the lack of attraction or excitement. But a lot of the time it may have to do with none of that. And even if those factors do exist, they exist for a lot of people, they might contribute, but they're not the core problem. If you address the real reason, there will be much less of a problem. The recent neuroscience has shown that sex doesn't work like a drive, like thirst or hunger, even though it feels like it, we've all been there. It's a circuit called the incentive motivation system. It means the incentive has to motivate the system to want sex. It needs to appear attractive to you. So your physiology, lifestyle and environment, they're contributing factors. But it's not what makes you want sex. I have worked for over 20 years in the capacity of a sex teacher and a sex therapist. I've talked to thousands of women over the course of 20 years in my practice, with many of them on these particular issues, very common. And I've helped many of them to make a complete turnaround much more effectively and sustainably than many other solutions they've tried by targeting the real core problem. And many women thought that it had to do with their libido or sex drive or hormones or exercise or stress. As we went deeper, there's a common reality that I observed. And it's basically that sex doesn't feel attractive enough or valuable enough. It's not just that it's not valuable or not nice, but it's not valuable or attractive enough. And spoiler alert, if you think that to increase the value of sex for a woman, we need to give more physical pleasure, a better orgasm, and make sex more exciting, this is the solution that doesn't work. If you give me a cookie, I'll have it, it's nice. If I have to run for an hour for that cookie, maybe it's nice, but it's not nice enough. However, I will run for an hour several times a week because it makes me feel energized, well, in a good mood, productive, all that. Yeah. Now, before I talk about the best case scenario, we must remember that huge number of women live in the worst case scenario. They don't feel anything at all from sex, and men never have any idea. But, let's take a good scenario. In our current understanding of sex, what is a woman supposed to get out of sex? We will say pleasure, orgasm, and hopefully sex is exciting, right? Mechanical stimulation that produces a pleasant physical sensation. What is the value of that? Can't buy a loaf of bread with it. I suppose a pleasant physical sensation is a kind of entertainment, but not a very interesting one compared to TV or to the phone. A woman may get an orgasm, one very nice sensation, but she can also get it much more quickly and easily on her own, and maybe she gets some excitement. What's the value of excitement? Also kind of entertainment, I suppose. She gets what is basically mildly interesting entertainment. Now, it's not that it's not nice, it's nice. But first, it's not very clear what is the massive value of this. In a life where there are many other things you have to do, you want to do, you struggle with time, energy, stress. And secondly, it kind of disappoints. Because most women kind of have a dream of sex being something much greater. They intuit that it's their energy, that it's about real connection and love and intimacy. Some kind of a real feeling of being whole and being alive. And women actually have a very deep connection with sex. It's really important to them. And it's just disappointing. Now, a lot of women can't make sense of this because the structure of sex has been given. Sex is about pleasure, orgasm, excitement. So women will say themselves, I want more pleasure, I want the orgasm, I want sex to be exciting, I don't want a sexless relationship. But then in action, women are proving it's not that important. A lot of the time women will say that sex is important to me, but I just, all those other reasons, energy, time. The thing is, even if those other factors exist, they exist for a lot of people, nobody's having a perfect life, what are you going to do? It's still the case that sex is not given enough value within those circumstances that you have, which could be health issues, or stress, or lack of time, or lack of energy. And it's still the solution. Now, I'm not claiming that it's the case for everybody. In sex, there are always big exception groups. Of course, if you have big relationship problems, for example, or your partner has totally let himself go and he's acting in really off-putting ways, or you have health issues that, severely affect your sexual system, that's likely to be the main reason. But in most cases of what's called low libido, low sex drive, I just believe the majority of women are sort of misdiagnosed. I've had a chance to observe this many times. Over the last 20 years, working with lots of couples and women, I was able to help them to develop that greater experience. I've had a lot of cases of women believing that it's a sex drive or a libido, but I could see how many times this would quickly turn around and they would love sex, they would want sex, If it was truly enriching, I want you to stop trying to increase your sex drive, your libido. A much more effective way of thinking about this problem is bring it down to a really simple equation. On one hand, what is sex actually giving me? What is the value of it for me? On the other hand, how much work it takes. You've got to change both parts of this equation. On one hand, make sex more enriching, more valuable. On the other hand, how can you make it more easy? Are there some pressures that you can take off? Are there some requirements you can take off? Can you make the whole thing less strenuous, less intimidating, not needing so much energy and time? This normally has very strong solutions to achieve that, like a more effective sexual technique that gives you a lot more for a lot less effort and less time, developing flexibility and variety of different kinds of sex that are really meaningful and enriching to you, but they also require less resources and time and energy. People do way too much in sex ineffectively, which makes it physically really difficult, and they always make sex into this big intimidating job that everybody avoids. So having better sex is having easier sex. But let's start with this side. How can we make sex more enriching and valuable so we can fix this problem? Most people, men and women, try to work out how to stimulate the body better for physical pleasure, how to give a better orgasm, or how to make sex more exciting, which will often not solve this problem. On a basic level, yes. So of course you can massively improve the value of sex for a woman just on a very basic level of giving her a lot more pleasure and orgasmicity in her body with the right knowledge, a much better process, sequence, better foreplay, activating the sensitive area better, more intelligently, how to access more pleasure and different kinds of orgasmicity. This also goes for women who are enjoying sex and they feel pleasure and orgasms, because they easily could be at 20-30% of what they could actually feel in sex with a better approach. The problem is typically people feel that they will find out from each other. The whole ask her what she likes philosophy. You both know what you know and you are already doing it, and you don't know anything else because you're not doing it. Then the woman feels all broken, she gives up, she doesn't even know what to suggest. Like in any other area in sex, there are experts who are dedicated to this knowledge, and that some external knowledge can take you a lot further. Men can up-level their skills on their own to give women this kind of experience, but women shouldn't just sit and wait until men do. Learn about sexuality yourself, even if it's on your own. You need to understand how exactly sex will look, what exactly needs to be done there. But ultimately, you see, what I've observed is that even when a woman gets physical pleasure and orgasms, it's often just not enough to make sex valuable enough. The other thing that people do is to make sex exciting. Myself, I consider it a really poor strategy because it often feels to a woman like a bit vacuous, a bit superficial. Even if you find some things that excite a woman more about sex, they tend to have this kind of sexual clickbait dynamic. So the lack of the actual substance, the lack of nourishment, the lack of fulfillment in sex itself remains. We are just finding new tricks to get interested in something that doesn't have, value in itself, right? That's the whole point. So that's a game you can keep playing. Some people can do this for a while. Some people get engaged for a short time and then they check out again. And in any way, you're building like a really heavy sex life here, which skews that other part of the equation where sex is, a lot of effort and very difficult, because it's really difficult to find things consistently exciting enough to drive you into sex. So this all changes for a woman when partners start practicing a different kind of sex. And it's just a matter of changing the practice, which is great news, because it doesn't depend on somebody else or some uncontrollable factor. You can choose the experience of sex that you want in your life. It's giving sex a different vision, a different purpose, a different set of values, and learning to make that sexual energy. There is a far more powerful and enriching sex available to all of us, to both partners, because men often also eventually experience that lack of value and they check out of sex for the same reason. Although it's not going to feel like this now if your woman is constantly rejecting you. If both partners don't see sex as just some entertainment and excitement and a physical sensation, but she feels sex as sexual energy that she's saturating with, and it keeps flowing into her and has a very nourishing and enriching quality on her, and she comes alive with it. So the purpose of it is not to entertain, it is to enrich her and to nourish her. And also this experience contains powerful love, physical love through her body with her partner, and she feels it's a real connection, real time of being together. And all of that will contain a lot of pleasure that's not going anywhere. And possibly, optionally, you will open a range of orgasmic energies to just learn a bit more how to use the body more intelligently to create richer sexual energy there with less effort. Then you've got sex that feels not just as a physical sensation and a bit of entertainment, but an experience that feels truly nourishing and enriching, loving, connecting. There's a lot more rich pleasure and blissfulness that feels more like sexual energy. And it's just a matter of changing the practice. So these are all really powerful nutrients then. Different ones all at the same time, but really important for women that make a big impact. And then it feels like a much more beautiful and satisfying experience for a woman to have in the first place, but also it feels more like a real source, like an energy in her life that makes her feel well, more alive, more whole. It flows into her daily life, into her energies. It does lots for her connection to her partner. Then there's a real big, tangible difference from having sex. And then a woman can lean a lot more towards it and appreciate it and want it and make time and effort for it.